Hello, Chuck Patton here with Chuck's Rose Patton Coffee Consulting, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about coffee grinders and why they are important. So coffee grinders, well, you need them in order to make a cup of coffee, number one. But what type of coffee grinder you get is really going to dictate what type of coffee you produce, regardless of the pour-over recipe, regardless of the type of extraction that you're using. It all starts with the grind. Now, way back when I started getting into coffee, this was the first grinder that I had. Now, if you were growing up in the 80s or the 70s, pretty much every household had a coffee grinder like this. As you can see, it's pretty simple. There's a blade inside. Essentially, you would put the whole beans in here, you put the lid on it, and you turn it on or you press go, and the longer you leave the unit on, the finer the coffee would get. All great, except for the fact it would usually take a while to get to a grind size that would produce a good pour over and something like this, and especially for espresso, so for a fine grind. The two things that are kind of not great about these grinders is they don't produce a consistent grind size, and they take too long to grind. And the longer you have a whole bean in a grinding environment, the more it will heat up. The more it will heat up, the more flavors the coffee will lose. So if you take a long time in the grinding environment, a coffee is going to lose a lot of florality, a coffee is going to lose a lot of sweetness, and certainly complexity. So while these are still very common and you can get them for very cheaply, they're not necessarily the best way to grind your cup if you're making coffee at home. The plus side is that they are small, they're super portable, and like I said, they are really affordable. So in a jam, go for it. Now what I'm going to talk about today are burr grinders. So these two grinders you see in front of me are both burr grinders. They're a little bit different. I'm going to talk about the differences today. But first I'm going to talk a little bit about a burr grinder. There's a conical burr grinder, but both these are flat burr grinders. Flat burr grinders use a pair of discs like this. On one side there is a cutting surface on each one of these discs, and they face each other and spin around. So a coffee will basically pass through the grinding surface and then fall into some sort of hopper like you see here or here. The terrific thing about a burr grinder is number one, it takes a lot less time to produce ground coffee. Here it's going to take a while, but with a burr grinder, either one of these, basically the coffee passes through this grinding environment, and that's it. So what would take you, say, 15, 20, 30, 40 seconds in this grinder will take maybe 10 seconds in a burr grinder. So right off the bat, even if you're buying a budget burr grinder, you're going to be able to produce a better cup than you would with something like this, simply because the coffee isn't going to be exposed to as much friction. And friction causes heat, and as we know, heat takes away from a coffee's complexity, variety, and sweetness. So what I'm going to talk about today are two different flat burr grinders. One is the Baratza Forte, and the second one is the Timemore Sculpture 78. I'm going to start today by talking about the Baratza Forte. The Forte has been around for years. It's basically been the same design for the last 10 years or so, and it's a great grinder. It's great for home use, and it also works well in a cafe environment. At Bird Rock Coffee, we had 2 or 3 of these set up in every location's pour-over bar, and the reason we did that is because it saved a lot of time and it helped make things more efficient. So number one, this hopper size is pretty big. It holds about 8 ounces of coffee. So if you have 2 or 3 of these set up, you can have a couple different coffees ready to go. It's very easy to adjust the grind size. You can make broad adjustments on this size and then fine tune your grind size on this side. And again, so if you're using different pour over methodologies, you can really customize it as to maximize that extraction. The fantastic thing about this grinder is that it can grind by weight. So you can set 3 different weight settings, 18 gram, 20 gram, 22 grams. And all the barista has to do is just press one of these buttons. The coffee will start to grind, and underneath this hopper, there's a scale. And so in real time, the coffee will produce how much weight you set it for. And then, so efficiency-wise, what a barista can do is push a button, set up a filter, come back, the coffee's ground, and bam, brew the coffee. So this unit is great for that type of environment. It's a real time saver. It's really solidly built, it's metal construction. As you can see, it's very compact in size. It certainly doesn't take up much room. And so it really works well in busy cafes. And of course, it also works well in the home. Now, Baratza does make cheaper versions of this. This one runs around $900. But Baratza does make cheaper versions of kind of the same idea. And you can go on the website and check it out. But this particular, the Forte, I've been really happy with. I haven't had any problems with it. I probably change these burrs based on my use once or twice a year. It's very easy to work on. The burrs are very easy to change out. I really think this is a terrific grinder for the money. The other burr grinder I'm going to talk about today is the Timemore. This is the Sculpture Series 78 pour-over model. Now, this is obviously designed very differently from the Baratza. We don't have a hopper to hold beans in this one. In fact, you weigh out the coffee ahead of time per dose and you feed it into this hole right here. There's an auger underneath this part that feeds the whole beans into the grinding environment, and you have the burr set basically set up like this, and the ground coffee falls out here into a receptacle. Now you have a great little feature here, this little clicker that shakes out any fines. And that's a handy little feature. In this one, there's nothing like that. You kind of have to vacuum it out every now and then to clean it up. But this one sort of, it makes things a little bit more efficient. Now the other interesting feature on this grinder is that there's a dial in the back, and you can actually alter the rate with which these burrs are moving around. So you can basically slow it down or speed it up. And it's a great way to experiment with how burr speed can impact the flavor of a cup of coffee. The biggest difference between these two coffee grinders, though, really lies in the actual set of burrs. The 78 on this one stands for the size of the burrs, and they're 78 millimeters. The burrs on this Baratza are 54. So right off the bat, you have a much bigger burr or surface area to grind coffee. That's going to give you a more consistent grind size, and it's also going to be more efficient when it's grinding the coffee. The other unique characteristic about this grinder, and the burrs in particular, is the actual design of the cutting surface of these burrs on this unit are specifically designed to produce optimal flavor in a pour-over. Now, they also have a burr set for espresso, but I got the pour-over one because I do a lot more pour-over than espresso. So, I guess the question is, which one is better, and is one better than the other? I think both of these grinders are solidly built, but obviously there are differences, and what are the advantages? Well, the advantages here is probably convenience, and I think the advantage of this one is you're going to get a little more clarity in the cup. Now, I tested that out not by doing a pour-over, like a V60 pour-over, but I tested these grinders out by using this Mocha Master single cup. And this has kind of been my go-to coffee brewer at home for years. I think these are great units. They produce great cup of coffee. I do use a flat bottom Kalita filter versus the Melita filter that it comes with, but this was a great way to test out and to check out the differences with these grinders. I'll use about 18 grams of coffee versus about 285, 290 milliliters of water. And that's about a 1 to 14, 1 to 14.5 ratio. Now, using the same grind size and the same dose and the same water, I found that the Timemore was producing a little bit more transparent cup of coffee, and the Baratza was producing kind of a fuller mouthfeel cup of coffee. I've gravitated towards using this Timemore for 100% of my cuppings. And I use it for the cuppings for that reason. I get a kind of a more clarity in the cup. It's easier for me to kind of pick out the flavors. It's a little more transparent, a little bit more sparkling in the cup here too, versus cupping with the Baratza. But again, it kind of depends on preference. I think both these grinders, as you can see, are pretty space-saving models. They don't take up a lot of room. I think both grinders are very well built. This is very solid construction. And both grinders fall under $1,000. So while they aren't budget models, they certainly aren't super high-end models, even though both of these have features that higher-end models have. So I think both these are good options for not only home use, but maybe in the cupping lab and in a cafe environment. I I think both these units, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with them, especially for the price. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thank you.